Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to my channel. My name is Kylie if you're new, and today I will be reviewing some new releases that came to Netflix. So today I will be reviewing The Babysitter, The Devil All the Time, One Bedroom, and #Alive. And there will be timestamps linked down below if you only care about my thoughts on a particular movie. By the way, this entire video will also be spoiler free. So I thought that I could wait to talk about the best for last, but I can't wait to tell you guys about The Babysitter Killer Queen. This sequel came out on September 10th of this year. It received a 41% on Rotten Tomatoes, and here's what happened. 2 years after defeating a satanic cult led by his babysitter B, Cole once again has to outsmart the forces of evil when old enemies unexpectedly return. You guys, this movie, I love it so much. So much. So this is a dark comedy starring Samara Weaving, which is just, those are two of my favorite elements that a movie could possibly have. I love dark comedies and I love Samara Weaving. I'm also becoming a bigger fan of Judah Lewis. He was also in Summer of 1984, and that's on Shudder. That's a pretty good movie. He's in The Christmas Chronicles, which is actually a really fun random Christmas movie that's on Netflix. So he's impressing me. I'm hoping that he continues to act in horror because I would love to see more from him. But I just can't tell you how much love I have for this movie, and I honestly think it's better than the first one. This is definitely more of a comedy than a horror, and I love that because the performances of all the actors in this movie, like the talent, the comedic timing that all of these actors have, I'm blown away. Even King Batch, who is from Vine, made terrible Vines, by the way. He was not funny back then. But as a comedic actor, he's extremely talented, in my opinion. I thought he was so funny. And I think that his performance also improved a lot from the first Babysitter movie as well. All the comedy is just so stupid, but like in the best way, and it's actually effective because a lot of times there's just such a fine line between comedy being trashy and being brilliant. It's a very weirdly fine line. This movie walks it so well, and it's so funny. Comedy is also totally subjective, but if you're curious about what my sense of humor is, it's basically The Babysitter Killer Queen. I will say that the first act of this movie started a little bit iffy. I was like, oh, they're kind of just leaning more on like the absurdity and the crazy cinematography and graphics that they used in the first movie. I don't know if I'm really vibing with this, but then the second and third acts, like once all the action starts to pick up, there's this big twist. It's incredible. It gets so good, and all of my worries just walked right out the door. But briefly going back to the performances of these actors, I think that the character that Robbie Arnell plays in these movies, Max, is something quite special. He's always shirtless, and in the first movie there are a couple lines of dialogue about like, why is he shirtless? And he's like, I don't know why I'm shirtless, like I'm just shirtless for no reason. But it's not for no reason, because in the first movie, like Samara Weaving's character is kind of shown off, like they're swimming in the pool, there's some like slow-mo cinematography just kind of showing how hot she is. But then we also have Robbie Arnell, who is just ripped and shirtless, and it just lets you know that the movie is not catered just to the boys. This movie is also catered to the girls and the gays, and you love to see it. So it sounds kind of weird, but I'm like, well, finally, a man is being objectified in a horror movie. Equality! The last thing that I want to say about this movie, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. The dancing scene. The dancing... Need I say more? The dancing scene. I'm not gonna say any more because spoilers, but just... brilliant. It was so tasteful and so implicit with what was actually going on in the story. I just love that so much. That was my favorite part of the movie, hands down. I will wrap up with this movie, but the one tragic thing about it is they did not set it up for a sequel. It definitely feels like the conclusion. I don't think we're gonna get any more movies, but I'm okay with that because they ended it really well. It's ending on a very solid note. I really would rather they didn't taint the series at all and try to continue it on, especially if they didn't have the same cast. I wouldn't want it. So I'm fine with it. It's sad, but I'm fine with it. I don't want it to be tarnished. Excellent movie. You guys will probably not all enjoy it the same way that I did. I can basically guarantee that, but this is hands down my favorite movie that I was gonna talk about today. It's all downhill from here, so let's move on. So up next, I want to talk about 1BR, which is not a new movie. It came out in 2019, but it did just get released to Netflix like a couple weeks ago. This movie actually received an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, and here's what happened. New to Los Angeles, a woman moves into a seemingly perfect apartment complex and soon finds out that there are consequences for breaking the rules. I know I said that we were going to be going downhill from The Babysitter, but I actually loved this movie too. I found it to be extremely interesting. It was pretty well made. There were some really disturbing horror elements. There was a great twist at the end. I was really impressed. Unfortunately, there isn't much that I can talk about without giving spoilers, because one great thing about this movie is that it really doesn't waste any time. We basically start in with the action almost immediately. I'd say that the first twist and first kind of horrifying moment happens maybe like 15 to 20 minutes in. You pretty much dive in head first, which is great. So the pacing of this movie is incredible. They really waste no time. Every scene contributes to the plot. Everything moves it forward. Everything that happens will definitely maintain your interest. There's a lot of twists and turns and really quite strange stuff that goes on. It also kind of has the tone almost of like a mystery movie, where you know that at the end you're gonna get some big answer that you weren't expecting, and it comes. And I was really satisfied with the ending. I know that there are some people talking about it that don't really like the ending, and they weren't like that big of a fan okay, can't speak. There were people that weren't that big of a fan of the twist, but I thought it was pretty strong. Like, it might have been slightly predictable, but not to the degree in which the actual events happen. Like, I still think you'll be surprised by the ending to an extent. The movie possibly could have been executed better had they had like a higher budget and a better cast, but that's not their fault, and with what they had, they created something really amazing in my opinion. My only qualm with the movie, my only issue, is that the main character is very bland. Just not really a fan of her. You do root for her, there's nothing wrong with her, I don't think. She's just not super interesting. Like, they do give her a backstory, and her backstory is relevant and interesting to the plot, but she herself, kind of boring. But that's all I have to say about 1BR actually, so I'm just gonna move on to #alive. So this is a South Korean zombie film. It came out this year and received an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes, and here's what happened. The rapid spread of an unknown infection has left an entire city in ungovernable chaos, but one survivor remains alive in isolation. This is his story. So like I mentioned, this is a South Korean zombie movie, which if you've seen Train to Busan, you know that they make these movies well. I'll get into my thoughts, but briefly, I just want to mention that I like watching foreign horror movies when I get the chance, because often when I watch horror movies, I can't help but getting distracted here and there. Like, I'll get a message on my phone, or, you know, I'll be taking notes on my computer, because I take notes for almost every movie that I watch, and then I'll just like, you know, go on YouTube and check some of my comments and reply to some of you guys. So movies generally don't have my attention like the entire time, but when they're in English, I can just hear them and like hear what's going on, and then like I know if something important is about to happen or something. But with international movies, I have to read the subtitles, so I have to be engaged and I have to watch the movie the whole time. So that's why I like watching them. I know a lot of people don't watch foreign horror, but they can be really good. So if you never have, definitely give this one a chance. I liked this movie. With this one, much like 1BR, you start right in the middle of the action, so I would say that within the first like 5 minutes of the movie, there is the initial like outbreak and things going crazy. So this movie wastes no time in the beginning. I will say that there are some times in the movie where I kind of lost interest, just because it's a little bit less interesting when you're only following one person. The story is not so much about the zombies as it is about the isolation, I think, and getting through a difficult circumstance. It actually feels really applicable to what's going on in the US right now, at least, because the world is just crumbling around us at the moment, and a lot of people such as myself are kind of just stuck self-isolating while everything is happening around us, and so it feels very personal. It feels pretty relatable. But on that note, there's not a whole lot of action with the zombies. There still is some, and there is a lot of gore. Like the special effects that they used, or the practical effects, were really gross. So if you're a fan of gore, they do sprinkle some of that in there, and it's nasty. But the movie is mainly about this guy, and so if you're more of a horror fan, or like you're more of a gore fan, I don't really think you're gonna like the movie that much. I honestly think you might get bored. I got a little bit bored at parts because I didn't realize I'd just be watching him just kind of like by himself surviving for majority of the movie. And also the grander lesson of the movie is kind of about social media and how it could be helpful in bad situations like this, which is true to an extent. I just don't feel like they utilized it in the way that they could have. I don't want to get into that though, because I promise no spoilers, so just be warned understand that the movie kind of might drag a little bit at times, but it is well made. I think it's a good movie. I probably won't rewatch it, but I think you guys might like it. Now, for the final movie that I'm gonna talk about, this actually just released about a week ago, and that is The Devil All the Time. This received a 66% on Rotten Tomatoes, and here's the synopsis. A young man is devoted to protecting his loved ones in a town full of corruption and sinister characters. So I actually have a couple of fun facts for this one because I don't have as much to say about this movie. So Chris Evans was actually originally cast as Sheriff Lee Bodeker, but had to drop out of the film due to scheduling conflicts, and then his Marvel co-star Sebastian Stan actually took his place and played the role instead. Tom Holland actually stars in this movie, and he is top billed despite not showing up in the film until 46 minutes in. Robert Pattinson also stars in this movie, and he took inspiration for his character from videos of evangelical preachers, apparently. He also didn't work with a dialect coach for this movie, and he came up with his weird high-pitched southern drawl all on his own. He also hid his accent from everybody, including the director, not wanting any outside direction because apparently he didn't want to overthink it, and so the first time that the director heard it was the first day of his shooting. And my last fun fact, real spiders were used in this movie. So if you've seen that scene, if you know what I'm talking about, those were real spiders. So this movie stars some of my favorite actors. You have Mia Wasikowska, you have Robert Pattinson, Bill Skarsgård, and Tom Holland, among other very credible and great actors. And I only lasted an hour into this movie. The cast and the performances of those actors are incredible. They did an amazing job. I also think that the cinematography is very interesting. It's very well done. The color scheme is cool, and I usually like period pieces, but I couldn't stand this movie at all. It's so dark and depressing, and you have to be in the right headspace to watch this movie because it's told in a non-linear fashion and it jumps all over the place. And I usually like non-linear stories because I think that flashbacks and stuff like that can actually serve a really important function. However, I couldn't really figure out the rhyme or reason as to why this movie was jumping around so much and with different characters and different storylines as well. It was really hard to keep track of. So like I said, I only lasted an hour into this movie, and I feel bad about that reviewing it, but I did talk to some of my other friends who finished the movie, and all three of them said that they stuck it out to the end to see if it would get better, and all of them told me that it did not. So you'll have to take their word for it. I believe them because I lasted an entire hour into the movie and it just did not get better. I started to enjoy it a little bit when Robert Pattinson came on screen. He came on probably 50 minutes into the movie, and then he was only in the movie for about 5 minutes. They Robert baited us. In the trailer, it seems like he is more of a main character. It's Robert bait. I felt Robert. It was a scam. Because yeah, Tom Holland is kind of the star of the movie and he's the boy, but Robert Pattinson is the man. And I just can't believe that they misled us like that. I don't know. I don't trust trailers anyways. I happened to see that one because I was on Netflix and couldn't really avoid it. But I always try to not watch trailers so that I go into the movie with an open mind, you know? But with this one, I was so genuinely excited because the cast was so good and I felt very betrayed. The whole thing was just so miserable. I didn't see it getting better at any point, and all my friends told me it did not get better. And that reminds me so much of the movie 1922. It's a Stephen King adaptation that's also done by Netflix. In my opinion, a terrible movie. It's well made and well acted, but it's just a series of extremely miserable events and it never gets better. And this fit the tone of 1922 to a T. It's a period piece with a bunch of characters that just have terrible lives. And that's basically it. So bear all that in mind if you try to see this movie. It is very well made with really good high-profile actors, so you might like it. I really don't think you will, but to each their own. So I would say watch it and see how you feel about the tone, because I promise you it doesn't change throughout the entirety of the movie. So see if you like the tone of it at all. And if you don't like it or you're feeling uncomfortable, I recommend just turning it off. But maybe just try it out. Just try it out for yourself and see. I think I'm gonna wrap up this video talking very briefly about the movie Paramedic also. I didn't put this one in the thumbnail because I'm not really gonna review it. The Paramedic released on September 16th and it is a Spanish film, but it's more of a drama thriller. Based on the synopsis, I thought that it might be interesting because sometimes I do enjoy more of a thriller. I really like the movie Zodiac, for example. But this movie, again, was also just way too dark for me. I only lasted about 20 minutes, and it's not because of how dark it was, but because the main character is so unlikable. You are rooting against him for almost from the get-go. You just do not like this man. And so I turned it off after 20 minutes because I'm like, I'm not gonna sit down and watch this entire movie if I'm rooting for the main character's downfall. Just not my cup of tea. So, very brief review on that one. I only lasted 20 minutes, so I just really don't recommend trying that one out. Unless you're a fan of misery and actively rooting against the protagonist. But yeah, that about does it for all my Netflix reviews. There is another movie that came out on Netflix called I'm Thinking of Ending Things, and I just haven't gotten around to watching that one yet, although I did want to review it for this video. But Netflix is dropping so many movies right now, especially in like the horror or thriller realm. I'm like, calm down, like give me a minute. But to conclude, if you're new here, I post on this channel 3 days a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 5 p.m. And I also have a vlog channel, but I only really post over there when I travel or when I do other like random miscellaneous things. Like very soon I will be decorating my room for Halloween, and that'll be going up on my vlog channel, so I'm really excited about that. So subscribe over there if you're interested in seeing that. You can follow me on Letterboxd, Instagram, and Twitter. My username for all three is Kai Johns, and on Letterboxd, that's where I talk about movies that I don't intend on reviewing on this channel. I'll probably do my review of I'm Thinking of Ending Things just on Letterboxd because I'm probably not going to dedicate a whole video to that. So definitely follow me on there if you're interested in my thoughts on that. And then on Instagram, I always update you guys on whatever movie I'm watching so that you guys can watch it too, just in case I do a review of it soon. But as always, check out those petitions and GoFundMe's linked down below. I update those every single week. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope I catch you in the next one. Bye!